Welcome to Internet Safety, hosted by Donna Rice Hughes. Over the next hour, you'll learn practical and crucial tips on how to keep your loved ones safe in the digital world. Now, here is Donna.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our podcast. I'm your host, Donna Rice Hughes, and today's episode is titled Kids Safe Phones, What Every Parent Needs to Know. Now, as a parent, if you have a kid that is of internet age, are you playing a tug of war with them, saying, Mom, Dad, I have to have a smartphone. Everyone else has one. And you're going, oh, gosh, what's the right time to give them a smartphone? Or have you already given them a smartphone and you can't get them off the smartphone? And you're going, oh my goodness. Or maybe your school has limited or restricted the smartphone use while in school, and you're scratching your head going, what do I do? How do I navigate the internet world and my kids' access to all of the good and all of the bad with their mobile device? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about today, and hopefully answering these questions and others that you might have. So I am so pleased to have our guest today. His name is Bill Brady, and since 2018, Bill has focused his career on providing children with healthier solutions for using technology, and he is the co-founder and the CEO of Trumi, the Kids Safe Phone for digital wellness and positive mental health. And he is also the proud dad of 5 great kids. Bill, thank you so much for joining us.
Donna, thank you for having me. Really excited to be here.
Well, thank you. So where did you get your passion to help families navigate this digital world, all the challenges, the pitfalls, and the great parts of it as well?
You know, it really started decades ago. Interestingly enough, I had read a book called Technopoly by a guy named Neil Postman when I was doing my undergraduate studies. And it just kind of opened my eyes to the potentially dehumanizing effects of technology on people, if you say. And I was already realizing, and this is even pre-smartphone and pre-social media, but recognizing that technology is changing the way we communicate and relate to each other. And when I got married, my wife Heidi and I decided, hey, let's just be very intentional, in how we bring technology into our home, understanding that we wanted all the good, not anti-technology in any way, but let's be careful about the potentially negative consequences of some technologies. And all of that accelerated as we had, these 5 great kids that you mentioned.
Well, Bill, thank you so much. And I appreciate your intentionality and how that then led you to found Trumi. And we're going to get into this. So everyone, please stay tuned. We're going to talk about this fabulous phone, Trumi, and what it does and how it can help you as a parent. But first, in case you haven't heard, probably you have already, if you're a parent or a grandparent, there is a big kids safe phone movement now in the United States and also globally, where schools are either limiting or restricting smartphone use. So, as you just said, Bill, one of the things that is so important that parents, I hope, understand is that when you open up your child to the digital world, whether it's through a smartphone, a laptop, a gaming device, all of those controls are usually open to everything. So they're getting all of the good and all of the bad. So it becomes very, very challenging and overwhelming oftentimes for a parent to navigate that and figure out, how do I help them get to the good, the constructive parts of the internet, what I want them to know and to use and to be able to learn from, and then how do I keep the negative and the bad away? So what do you think, Bill, about where we are right now in terms of schools, many across the country, entire states even, like Virginia and Florida, that have actually said, no smartphones in schools.
Yeah, actually think that's a great movement. In different schools or districts or at the state level have parameters about how that works, whether you can't bring the phone at all. Usually it's no phone in the classroom. And
Right.
I really agree with that. I think teachers need to be able to teach and have kids not be distracted by the vibrations and the ding ding. And I read research recently where 97% of kids acknowledge using their phones during class. And that's not fair to teachers, and it's not fair to other students that are wanting to focus and concentrate and learn.
And we also know from the research that screen time has become highly addictive for kids. And as adults, if you've got a smartphone, I'm assuming you do, if you're living in this digital world, we're even struggling with smartphone addiction. How often am I checking? How often am I scrolling? Scrolling to death, scrolling to death. So I absolutely agree with you. I think it's a good move to limit or restrict smartphones inside the classroom because you can't have distractions. It's hard enough to pay attention, especially to learn subjects that you don't know about, you need to learn about in order to pass, right? So I happen to like this, but I also know from talking with leaders, and I'll just mention my state where I am in South Carolina, I've been in recent conversations with the lieutenant governor here, as well as the Speaker of the House, and they passed a similar limit, if you will, on smartphones in school last year, and parents are screaming about it, going, how do I reach my kids? What if there's an emergency? What if there's a bombing? What if there's a school shooting? All these things are potential realities, right? And what we've done is provide them with enough a safe smartphone guide for parents to let them know, don't panic, parent. There are phones out there that will allow you and your child to communicate with one another in case of emergency or just because, but they don't have to be internet connected and exposing them to all the dangers, right?
Yeah, and I think that's actually a really interesting approach. With the solution that we've come up with, for example, a parent can say, hey, all of the functionality of the device is turned off during the school day, with the exception of, perhaps there's a certain app that schools want kids to have from time to time. And certainly it's always available for texting or calling with the emergency contact list, including parents would be on there. And so that's one interesting option, is for schools to say no phones in the classroom unless they're dialed down to nothing except for the ability to do emergency contact with parents or authorities.
And I love that. And I can't wait to get into the features of Trumi. And we're going to do that here as we roll along. But I first want to talk about some of the key dangers that kids are open to when they have access to the internet. And I always like to boil this down to content, uh, inappropriate content like hardcore pornography that's not even protected speech for adults, which is all over the internet. We know that's a huge problem. Even images depicting children, which we call child sex abuse material, bullying information, just any type of toxic content. Then you've got contact. That is when a dangerous or harmful person can then interact with your child, like a trafficker, a sexual predator, a sextortioner, a bully for that matter. And so there's that contact danger. And then you've got the conduct danger. And you say, what does that mean? That is when the kids themselves are putting themselves at risk. So that could be sexting. They could be engaged in a bullying situation. They can be sharing personal information that would give their whereabouts away to someone who might want to harm them. So, Bill, can you elaborate a little bit on this and how you see that landscape? And then I also want to go to something I know is near and dear to your heart. What are the less obvious dangers and concerns?
Well, you're spot on. The obvious ones we think about, you hit the nail on the head. It's really inappropriate content, and it's rampant. It's everywhere, even where you wouldn't expect to find it. There's inappropriate content that is designed to pull kids into more inappropriate content, and so you do have to be vigilant, no question. And then the whole premise, the whole conundrum that parents deal with is, I want to give a phone to my child. The primary reason for that, for most parents, is so I can contact them and they can contact me. And the paradox, if you're not careful, is that they can then have contact with anyone else. And that means potentially opening them up to contact with bullies and predators, unless you're using a solution that's designed to avoid that. The second part of that you just referenced is, most parents realize, yeah, of course, pornography, bullies, predators, of course I don't want those things. The less obvious challenges are these spiking levels of stress, anxiety, depression, loneliness, isolation that we're seeing in our young people because of technology, because we've changed the way that we're raising kids. If you've read The Anxious Generation by Dr. Jonathan Haidt, he does a phenomenal job of walking through, kids used to have a play-based childhood, and they were learning and growing and having the challenges and learning from every experience. And then we said, you know what? It's going to be safer if we're with them all the time and they're always at home. And that happened right at the same time that we started giving them screens. Hey, just use the screen. And it's changed everything, not for good. And we see these spiking levels of mental health challenges among our young people, including 125% increase in suicide among our young people over the last 15 years. And that's an epidemic that's got to stop. And technology it's not the only factor, but it is a factor that we can very easily change and change it for good.
Absolutely. And Bill, I started in 1994, and one of the things I used to always say, I don't say it now, is that technology is neutral. It can be either used for good or evil, because that was very much the case in the first generation, if you will, of the internet, where it was just surfing online, exchange, sending emails, that kind of stuff. Then the interactive side of technology came about with social media, where now you've got this interactive part where you can communicate, upload, download, you can do a much, much more. And now we know for a fact that technology companies are not neutral. They are actually developing their algorithms to draw kids into the technology, to keep them hooked, to lead them down into these black holes, oftentimes, to put content in front of them that can draw them astray. So the technology is no longer neutral, is it?
No, because all of us who use the technology are the product. We're the product that those technology companies are selling to advertisers. And the more engaged they can keep us, whether that's positive or negative engagement, whether the consequence of that engagement is positive or negative, the more profit potential there is for them. And tragically, kids are especially susceptible to some of those potentially negative outcomes of social media and excessive screen time. For boys, social media, too much, too soon, too young, however you want to characterize it for the values of your family, leads to some of those content addictions. And for young women, the evidence is overwhelming that too much time on social media or doing social media at a young age leads to feelings of, I'm not good enough, I don't have enough, just poor self-esteem. And that's one of those lines that I think we have to draw as a society. And you see states taking action on this now, saying, social media companies need to enforce age requirements, and frankly, those age requirements need to be higher than what the standard has been to this point.
That's right. And just on social media, just a little note. Parents, if you don't know this, social media companies do have an age limit. You have to be over 13 years old. However, they haven't implemented age verification. So any 8-year-old, 6-year-old, 10-year-old kid can lie about their age and get access. So one of the things that we're really fighting for is for this age verification technology to be put in place. Not only that, for the age even to be raised higher. Because if you go back and think, if you're old enough, um, when social media first came about, there were two. There was Facebook and MySpace. They were designed for college age students and above. So that is that's the design of that type of technology. It was never designed for kids younger than that. And yet they lowered the age to 13, way too young in my opinion. But we're going to, we can talk about how we can limit social media because we're going to get to Trumi right now. So can you explain to our audience what is the difference between a safe smartphone like Trumi um, in comparison with an iPhone or an Android like a Samsung phone? Well, what's the difference?
Yeah, so the purpose of KidSafe Tech is to give parents a lot more control and flexibility about how to roll technology out to their kids. The approach we've taken at Trumi is to say, hey, buy, one phone when a child is younger, whatever that age is that you decide to introduce it, and then let that device grow with your child. Custom fit the settings in a very easy way to match the needs and maturity of a younger child, and then just sequentially introduce more and more functions and features as the child's needs and maturity evolve, without having to go replace the hardware every time you want to make a change. And that's you said the right word when you were introducing things. This is a movement. And more parents are just drawing a line in the sand saying, I'm done. I'm done, giving too much technology to my children. I don't want the negative outcomes for them.
Right. Well, we're going to get right into trimming now. So we're going to start with content filtering. And so here, of course, we're talking about the inappropriate content. So, Bill, I understand that Trumi's content filtering doesn't just let parents know if an inappropriate image or message was received by their child, but it actually blocks it from coming through. Now, how does that work?
So this is one of the really neat ways we're using AI for dramatic good, and that is to have the AI looking at incoming content, and so take text messaging. Um, First off, anything that is obviously over the line is blocked. So if someone sends in a pornographic image, it will not reach the child. And if someone's using the F word, that will not reach the child. So the very obvious stuff, we just automatically say, no one needs that.
Right.
And from there, there's flexibility where a parent can set the sensitivity of the AI to match the maturity of the child and to match their family values, so that it's not just the F word, for example, that's being blocked, and it's not just full nudity that's being blocked, but a parent can say, I don't even want bikinis. And that all of that happens automatically based on where they set that sensitivity level, and it's very easy. The other thing that's really important to us is that we made that content filtering apply to outgoing messages as well. So, for example, if in a moment of poor judgment, a child decides to send a nude pic of themselves, it will not go out. The system will block it, not just flag it and tell parents after the fact,
Yeah.
which is what a lot of other technologies do. It literally will intercept it and stop it, and then tell the parent.
Well, yeah, that and then tell the parent's really important, right? Because now you've got a behavior issue that the parent needs to deal with. This is risky behavior. This can, cause a lot of problems for you in a lot of different ways. And now you have a conversation starter, right? So let me ask you now, you're talking about messages coming in and out. That sounds like through text. Does the content filtering with Trumi, I'm assuming with Trumi, the child has access to the internet, right, and to the web. So will this actually block their ability to see this type of content or to go to any of these sites that would be inappropriate?
So first off, the internet's a great question. And by default, there's no internet on a Trumi device. A parent can choose to turn on a safe internet browser. The way that works right now is that the parent is predetermining what domains are okay. So it's a safe listing approach. There's no internet access. You can't just go browse the internet indiscriminately, but you can use these domains that the parent has identified. In our new browser that's coming out shortly, we'll actually be using AI to vet page requests in real time. You can say to your child, here's an internet browser, but it's going to follow the parameters that I've set as a parent. So, for example, a parent can say, no pornography, obviously. No, no gambling, no hate speech, whatever those things are that they don't want their child interacting with. And then in real time, as the child is requesting a page, AI is vetting that page request. And if it meets the standard, there's none of those things that the parent has said, I don't want, then it serves the page. And if it doesn't meet that standard, and it's checking in real time, then it will, serve the page to the child. So that's a massively positive way for parents to say you can have the benefits of the internet without all these risks of the inappropriate content and
Right.
interaction with people that I don't want you interacting with.
So I love that. So from what I'm understanding that you just said, with the Trumi phone, this is really more designed for phone calls, texting, and that kind of thing. So your content filtering is going in and out of text messaging and that type of thing happening on the Trumi device. And you have turned off web browsing just as a default. So it sounds like to me that is one of the key differences between an Android or an iPhone, because automatically all that is open, right? So when you get an iPhone, a kid can do all of the above. They can send whatever, they can receive whatever, they can go on the internet and get whatever, the good, the bad, and the ugly, correct?
Yeah, and well, part of that, to just extend what we're doing, we draw a line and we don't do social media. Social media is that first gateway that leads to a lot of content addictions, that leads to, the interaction in so many cases with, people that end up being bullies or predators or sextortionists and all that ugly stuff. So much of that is happening on social media. And then we see all the negative mental health outcomes of social media, and we just say, hey, we don't do that. We don't do that on Trumi devices, which makes it really easy for parents, because it's not a matter of trying to watch what my kids are doing on Instagram. We just don't do Instagram. That's a whole nother topic that we could get into.
Yeah, well, let's just go to the app management, all right? So I'm going to pop down here, app scheduling and app usage. So how do parents monitor and manage the apps that their kids are using? And how much time they're spending on those apps if the parent decides to say, okay, you can use Instagram, or okay, you can use whatever, Twitter or X. Sorry, Elon. Okay, go for it.
So a parent wouldn't be able to say you can use Instagram or X or anything else. So what we've done is, first off, we've curated, a set of Trumi endorsed apps, if you will. Put our badge of approval on. These apps, are not going to contain pornography. They are not going to have workarounds for your kids to reach inappropriate content. They're not going to have any interaction with people that you don't intend for your kids to be interacting with. From there, we've got a broader library that parents have requested, and through parent interactions, we know, hey, these are popular but positive apps. We filter out the things that we know are harmful. We even let parents, one-off something from the Google Play Store if the child has a very specific need. Let's say I live in Laie, Hawaii, and my child needs Laie Community Bank. Well, that's going to be the minority of Trumi users are looking for that, but the parent would still be able to put that into a set of apps that then becomes available for the child to choose from on their device. So the child still has their own little app store experience, but a set of apps that the parents have already pre-curated.
Right.
So the child's not getting to apps that the parent doesn't intend them to have. But again, no social media, no pornography ever.
So, okay, so let's I want to dig on that just a little bit more. So let's just say a parent goes, I want my kid to be able to use Instagram, and that's not on your Trumi's curated, approved app list. Can a parent provide that access?
No.
Okay, there you go.
No, it's again, that's just a line that we draw, and there are a whole lot. I mean, we use some of those obvious ones as an example, but there are hundreds of thousands of apps, inside the typical app stores, millions that look innocuous, and you might think are innocuous, but have dangerous things in them.
Of
So
course.
even if a parent is going to that Google Play experience to say, yeah, I want my child to have that one, if it crosses boundaries, they wouldn't be able to say, I want my child to have Pornhub. It's not an option. It's an extreme example, obviously.
Yeah.
But anything that it crosses that line into inappropriate content or social media, it's not even available for the parent to say, I want my child to have that.
Oh, I love that. This is so great. So let's talk about time limits, even around safe apps. Your Trumi allows you to also do this with this feature, right?
Yeah, I'll give you a great example from my own house. So I've got a 15-year-old daughter that uses our product, and she loves audiobooks. And she uses a great app called Libby. And Libby allows you to check out, audiobooks. Well, if it left unchecked, our daughter would listen to audiobooks 12 hours a day. And that would obviously become a distraction to her schoolwork and her extracurricular involvement and those kinds of things. So we can schedule when Libby is available and say, hey, you can have up to 60 minutes a day with Libby, but only during these time windows. So you easily set the time windows and set the overall time limit. And then we have a dashboard that shows you all the apps that are most used by the child and for how long and when. So you've always got full visibility into what your child is doing across, frankly, any functionality of the phone. And that's been really helpful for a lot of our parents who haven't realized that the kids have an inclination to be doing things later in the night than they thought, and the parents then able to say, you know what, I'm just going to set a time limit on that and not make that functionality available after 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock or whatever time that is.
Yeah, and I'm a big proponent of time limits because, as you know, I mean, one of the things that just breaks my heart when I'm out and I see kids together sitting across from each other and everybody's got their phones out and they're not talking to each other. I'm like, what's the point?
Yeah.
What's the point of being together? So I want to go down to the dashboard again. You call it an emotional well-being dashboard. I love that. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so we have, inside the Trumi parent portal, there are numerous dashboards the parent can select that they want to have visible. One of those is the emotional health dashboard. The first part of that is super easy. A parent can select a word cloud dashboard that just provides this very visual, instantaneous look into what are the things that my child is talking about and what are the words they're using most commonly. And so in literally 3 seconds, you can see, are those words positive or are they negative? You can get a very quick feel for how that child is doing based on their conversations summarized into this word cloud. Parents love that. The second part of that is that we've introduced functionality recently that, when enabled, provides parents with actual insight into their children's predominant emotions. So
It's
based
amazing.
on the conversations that the kids have with this functionality, I can see, I'll just make up an example. Perhaps my child is feeling stressed, anxious, you know, depressed, and I can see that quickly, and then I realize as a parent, wow, I clearly there's something going on here I need to understand more about. It will even provide insights as to why the child might be feeling those things.
Hmm.
For example, Jane is feeling down about her grandmother passing away last week. Okay, that one I can understand, and I'm going to go talk to my daughter Jane and see, what other conversations we need to have. And those insights might be purely positive. The predominant emotions are happiness, excitement, enthusiasm. Fantastic. And that's what we hope the case is most of the time, that it's just those positive things. But it is a very helpful insight to know if my child's dealing with something that they may not be talking about.
Hmm. And I love that, and for a lot of different reasons. But I just want to make a point here that so often kids are sharing their feelings out in the open on the internet, on the web, on social media, on online gaming sites, that predators and traffickers and sextortionists use. So they're looking for those vulnerable childs so they can prey on those vulnerabilities. So I think it's great now that this is not being shared out there because they don't have access to the out there and the whole ethosphere, if you will, of the digital world. But within this closed, safe space that Trumi's created, a parent can see what's going on and then have those conversations with their kids. Now, one of the other features that I really like a lot, I used to call it a parent approved buddy list. You call it safe listing of
Yeah.
contacts. Uh, Talk about the safe listing of contacts, why that's important. I think it's extremely important. And also, let's just say you've got 5 kids like yourself. You don't have to create a list for every single kid. All right. So let's go there for a couple of minutes and then we're going to wrap.
When we started Trumi, there were some other companies out there that were, limiting kids to talk and text. They were saying no internet, none of the apps, just talk and text. The challenge that I saw with that is that they could talk and text with anyone.
Hmm.
So it didn't prevent them from being bullied. It didn't prevent them from being pursued by a predator. And so we said, in our case, let's give parents the ability to control who their kids are talking to. And so we introduced this technology of safe listing that allows a parent to approve all those contacts, but with flexibility. With a younger kid, you would have it set so that, a child can add a phone number on their phone, but that number can't be used, incoming or outgoing, until I've approved it as a parent. For an older child, I want them to have the flexibility to add their own numbers and not have to wait for my approval. So
Hmm.
you've got all of that kind of flexibility to really custom fit it to the needs of your child. But then, like you said, you might have multiple kids using a Trumi phone, and you don't want to go through having to do a safe list for every kid. And
Right.
so you have one master safe list, and then just with little radio buttons, determine which of those contacts is relevant for each kid. So like if it's grandma, Bobby, Sally, and Jane all get to talk to grandma. If it's, Sally Smith down the road and she's only friends with one of my kids, well, that's the kid who gets Sally. And it's just that simple. So you're only having to maintain one list in one place.
I love it. Okay, there's one final point. I thought I had them all, but this one I really like too. It's the remote access that you're giving parents. So let's just talk about how they can remotely look at what they need to look at, even if their kid is with grandma. Hopefully,
Yeah.
grandma's doing all the right stuff, but you never know. All right, talk about let's talk
Well,
about remote.
most parents recognize that they should check in on their kids' text messaging. And we've always recommended that. It's not just, hey, here's a phone, good luck. Parents should be checking in, regardless of the technology they're using, to see how those texting behaviors are going. And so traditionally, that meant, all right, Donna, it's Saturday night, time for me to look at your text messages. Oh, remind me of your password. Okay. And then you stand there and have this awkward interaction that the parents don't enjoy, the kids hate, and it's not fun for anyone. And so what we did is we said, let's give parents the ability to remotely, from the parent portals, watch those text messages and have full reports about who the predominant texting people are and when those text messages are happening. And if I want to look at a conversation, I can see it in context of the full conversation. We call it an emulator view. It actually looks like a text message conversation would on the child's phone. I could even see that happening in real time if I wanted to. The other thing that's really useful for is that if the content filtering has flagged something as potentially concerning or blocked something, that's also where I go to see it. The content filtering will direct me right to that conversation. And again, I can see it in context. Maybe what was said was innocuous. It was enough to get flagged because of the words that were used. But when I see it in context, I can say, oh yeah, that was
Mhm.
innocent. Nothing for me to worry about.
Right, right. That's terrific. Thank you. This is so great. And I just encourage parents and grandparents, if you haven't yet gotten that child a phone, really consider Trumi. And also, look at the other phones that are out there as well. But I just love what you're saying, Bill, and thank you for explaining all of this. I've learned a lot. There are many safe phones for kids on the market, and Enough is Enough has created our smart phone guide for parents. And Trumi, of course, is one of them. We feature 5 phones. You've probably heard of some of them, like Bark and Gavin, of course, Trumi. And then we also look at an Android phone as well as an iPhone. And I love this guide. We're just putting it out, and we're going to put up on the screen for you exactly what you will find on this guide. So well, first of all, on the first page, we list the types of phones and what they do. All right. Then on the second page, this is just pure gold for parents because we've done all the work so that you don't have to. So what we've done is on the top of the guide, it's just one page. We've got these different phones listed that I just mentioned. Then on the far left, we've divided up administrative controls, app controls, and monitoring alerts. And what we've done is we've researched each one of these phones to see who's doing what. And then we're providing direct links to their website so that they and their tutorials can actually walk you through exactly what they're doing. So for instance, in administrative controls that provide remote monitoring, time limits, contact management, and of course, like I said, we've got live links. And of course, we know Trumi checked all those boxes. The second is app controls. Can you restrict or allow apps? Is there web filtering? What does that look like? And with Trumi, which I really love, is you don't even give access to the whole web, right? You've already got all this curated, Trumi approved safe apps, etc. So I just love that. And then, of course, the third part is monitoring and alerts. So you can look at the context of social media and everything else. Now, some of the phones don't provide all of this. So when you look at our guide, you'll see who does and who doesn't. If they do, you've got to check. You can go to their site and check it out. If they don't, they've got a big red X. So we're going to wrap up. Bill, this has been so helpful, and I am so excited that you started Trumi. Can you let parents know, first of all, how much does this phone cost? Can they use any phone plan that they might already have, AT&T, Verizon, etc.? How does all of that work?
Yes, great question. So, Trumi devices are Samsung devices. We're a Samsung partner, and we chose to use Samsung because it's reliable technology, great cameras. We've found devices to use that are affordable. So you can usually get a good promotion on a Trumi phone. We want to make them as accessible as possible for families at any budget. But even at full price, it's $200 for the device. That's it. And then you pay the monthly service, which actually covers the phone connectivity. So your talk and your text and your data, and it at the same time pays for this safe operating environment that we've created, and all the benefits of the parent portal. It's all just in that monthly fee. We have plans starting as low as $19.95 a month, so extremely affordable. We've wanted to make sure that every family can have this safe technology and within their budget and receive the benefits of it.
I love that. And when you think parents about what's the cost of an iPhone, I couldn't believe it when I got my first iPhone. And I'm like, are you serious? I have been an Android user and I still prefer Android, sorry, but I do. I was brought up on, Blackberries and then Android, and then I switched over to Apple, and I'm still not that crazy about it. But you're looking at well over $1,000. And what I just discovered when I got my first Apple phone, it didn't even come with a charger. They said, "Oh, we just assumed you've got your charger from your last Apple phone." I said I didn't have an Apple phone. So I had to go back to the store to get a charger to charge this $1,200 phone that was supposed to be in anyway. This is a really good price. So I think, compared for, gosh, what you're paying for kids' tennis shoes these days, $200 is nothing.
Yeah,
So, well, thank you. And the other thing I just want to let parents know, you've got a great website where you've got a lot of
thank you.
really good content out there that helps parents navigate safely online and know other things rather than just safe phone use. So, thank you. I just give you a big high five for that. So, how can parents find out about Trumi? What's the website address? Anything else you want to give us as far as your contact?
Yeah, the website's the best way, troomi.com, Troomi. And like you said, Donna, we've developed all kinds of resources there. On top of providing the product and the service, we really want to help take the feeling of overwhelm out of the whole relationship between kids and technology and parents, and just remove that as any kind of friction in that relationship and make it easy for parents to understand what they're dealing with and to parent in this digital age.
Right. And so I just want to encourage, thank you very much, Bill. For parents, if you're kind of on that, do I get the Android? Do I get the iPhone? Stop, pause. You have other options, safe options, good options that will allow your kids to grow with the technology based on the maturity that puts the management and the control in your hands, the parent, which you want, right? And then at some point down the road, you can consider jumping to a true Android or an iPhone. I think that's way down the road. So that's of course between, that's a family decision. So you do have options. And Bill, thank you so much for joining us. And
Thank
please,
you.
everyone, check out Trumi.com. Remember, you have us at internetsafety101.com or .org. Let me say that again, internetsafety101.org. Please share this podcast. Share it on social media, send it to your friends, email it. We've got lots of other podcasts, and we are here to help educate, equip, and empower you, the parents, so that you are the first line of defense and that your kids can have a safe and rewarding online experience. So thank you very much. Have a great day. And I always like to sign off with the words of my dear, dear friend Mary, who just passed away. If you see someone without a smile today, give them one of yours.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Internet Safety with Donna Rice Hughes, designed to educate, equip, and empower you to keep your children and family safe in the digital world. Until we talk again, have a beautiful and safe week.